Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel for another video, and this one will not be a vital tutorial, as I'll be, on the other hand, discussing a bunch of interesting, in my view, recent free plugin synths which are, well, wavetable capable, and they have a lot of the bells and whistles you might want from a modern powerhouse synth, and they're free, which is great. And I'm going to compare them feature-wise, sound-wise, and see what's what, and trying to get to the answer to the question which was posed to our barbarian friend in our caption or thumbnail, which I suppose you clicked on if you're watching this. So, without any further ado, let's get going. So, the first instrument I'm going to be discussing is Graphite, which you see here in this interface. It is, well, it was probably kind of hurriedly released when Vital came out, and as some people say, Vital is a Serum clone, and I don't think they're actually right. In this case, the thing is more appropriate, though, well, clone is a little bit of an overstatement. The interface is very similar, as you have two oscillators up here and the modulations down here. You have two oscillators as sources, plus a sub-oscillator and a noise generator, which in this case is an actual noise generator. It supports drag and drop modulations, as you can just grab, a modulation and drop it on a destination. And apart from this, sorry, everything is pretty straightforward. It comes with a few wavetables by default, and it also has no presets at all. If you want to make a sound out of it, you will have to program it yourself, which is, well, I don't know if it could be a good thing or a horrible thing according to what your ideas about synthesis are. It does have a lot of the features you would expect from a synth of this kind, including, as you can see, this nice visual interface. You can morph the LFOs and make them, add points and transform them, moving points around, as you would do in most synths like this, though it is a little bit quirky, and at times catching the points isn't that immediate. You can't do the same with envelopes. I mean, like here I have to reduce this sustain here, but you can do it with the curve points, which is, well, still a welcome thing. The modulation matrix is quite different from that of Vital or of Serum, as it has sources, and for every source, 4 destinations. There is this mode knob, which I don't know, isn't really properly named. As you see here, it's would you call it like a warp knob, whatever, call it whatever you want, but you see mode is like relative to the thing on beneath it. And here you can have pulse width modulation, which does what you would expect, and then FM from B, FM from the sub oscillator, or FM from the noise generator, or amplitude modulation from B, or ring modulation from B. Now, this, just to point it out, here it says B, but the oscillator is called oscillator 2. Well, not too coherent. There is this amazing parameter called fusion, which it took me a while to understand what it meant. And what it is actually just the unison blend amount. It doesn't seem like a nice name to give it. Why call it fusion? What's the point? And then there's filters, as you would expect from a synth like this, which are a bit tricky, because in order to have the filters on, you have to turn on the whole filters block and then turn them on one by one. It took me a while to understand, as this too does not really have a manual. And then you have filters working. Now, yeah, there's this envelope which I set to 0, so it will. And there's a bunch of possible options. There's a bunch of filters here. As long as you go for this ladder model, then there is this infinite impulse response and finite impulse response filters, which seem to be, well, I don't know, kind of, I wouldn't say unfinished, but I don't know. They don't seem really to, I mean, I couldn't find that much use for them. You can route them in series, in parallel, or however you want. And after all this, you can have a nice effects section, which also includes it's weird to have it here, as it, as it would be something which would be before everything else, not after it. After it's not an effect. Includes an arpeggiator, which is quite a limited arpeggiator, but still an arpeggiator nonetheless. You can change the routing of effects in the sense that you can change the order in which they come, but they will always be in series. Now, how does this sound? Let me show you a few presets of a few sounds I've made with it. And well, you see that it does have this kind of ugly digital quality to it. And one thing it does, I think it does pretty well, is horribly distorted sounds. Yes, there is this, in the effects section, there is this tube effect, which to my hearing and my understanding sounds nothing like a tube amp, but it does give some grit and character, which might be what you're looking for. So this is Graphite, basically. I don't think there is, there might be a lot more to say, really, but as you know, you could spend quite some time to program it. There's, whenever you modulate something here, you won't see a ring around it or something like that, like you would in Serum or Vital, but you will get the parameters appearing this thing that allows you to set the amount, and of course you will see that reproduced in the mod matrix here. It's quite nice. It's a feature, definitely, but this is basically all we have about it. So what do I think about Graphite? It's a nice thin synth, and it has potential. It has, for having all this amount of visual feedback, quite a low CPU hit, but it doesn't sound that pristine or amazing unless you're looking for something very wild and mean. It wouldn't be my synth of choice. And it is also at the moment quite buggy, but it definitely has room to grow. I mean, I believe it is still in part under development, and we will probably see, patches, presets for it, and probably, some fixes to the more or less minor bugs that afflict it. So it is time to move to the second synth in our discussion, which is Odin II, and here it is. Now, Odin is quite weird if you look at it. I mean, it seems like it's come from yesteryear. I mean, it reminds me somehow of Synth. I mean, it even has this fake wooden cheeks. What is it? A plug-in with wooden cheeks. Amazing, isn't it? And you might be induced to think it is just a virtual analog, but you would be wrong, because it is much, much more than that. You can have 3 oscillators and 2 filters before the amplifier, and then a third filter after it. There is 3 envelopes: filter envelope, mod envelope, and actually 4 envelopes, sorry. And there is also, of course, 4 LFOs, 3 per voice LFOs plus 1 global LFO, and there's a lot of things that these do. I mean, here you can have an analog oscillator for basically VA timbres, a wavetable oscillator, kind of limited but interesting, with a bunch of stock wavetables, and you can do a lot of things which aren't really that common. You have a vector oscillator if you want to delve into vector synthesis, which has never been that popular, but it has its uses. You can have this chiptune oscillator and this chip draw oscillator to make squarish, horribly digital sounds, which could be your thing. You can do FM and even phase modulation. I mean, both fake FM and real FM. But another thing, which is, the thing which I believe to be the most peculiar of this instrument, is that if you go here in the mod matrix, which works like you have a source, to destination, and an auxiliary source, something that scales the modulation, a bit like in Serum, if you think about it. You can use as a source the output from each oscillator, or even the output from filters. So you can end up doing some powerful filter FM, or actually filtered FM. You can modulate every parameter in the synth at audio rate with anything coming out of an oscillator or a filter, which is great. I mean, those sounds can evolve a lot. One thing which is, I mean, though the instrument, even though this gives it an amazing amount of synthesis power, it does have a few limitations. One is that you have no way, I mean, you can loop envelopes, but what you can't do is change the curve of the segments of it. They're rigid somehow. Then another thing you can't do is controlling the phase of the oscillators directly, which would be cool if they could be, you know, possible modulation destinations. What you can do is just say reset or not. This is all you can do about the phases. Filters are also quite great. There's a bunch of possible low passes, which sounds pretty nice already. I mean, even the basic low pass here has quite, let me go to, yeah, it's classic, and let me go to same thing here. But you see, it has, as you would guess from the knob, some ideas of having a moogish response. And there is this saturation knob. I mean, it's gritty, it's nice, and it sounds creamy and clean. I mean, it's great. I really like it. And there are also here a bunch of other filters. There is this SEM filter, which sounds great, I believe. And I mean, and this Korg emulation, like, you know, it would sound kind of like an MS-20 filter. And also there's a diode ladder, which I suppose you know what it is, but it also supports comb filters and Foreman filters, or even a possibility to do ring modulation from a filter rather than from another sort of modulation. You can choose here in the Foreman filter to have two different vowels and transition from one to the other with a knob. Quite something, I mean, not that amazingly exotic, but nice. Another thing I wouldn't say I really don't like, but I mean, it could be a little better, is the effects section, as you can have a delay, a phaser, a chorus, or a flanger, or end, actually. I mean, you can have them all at the same time, but that's all you have. You can't control the order in which they, oh, actually you can, sorry. I mean, you can control the order, but they will always be in series. And another thing you can't do is, you know, having them do anything different from that. But I think it's not really a big drawback, as there's, as you sure know, you know, you can add another effects in the chain, your signal chain, and do your thing and whatever. I did a few sounds with it. I'll have you hear some. And yeah, it has sound. I mean, it. It does a lot of things. And yeah, and it's really... I done. And yeah, this is all about Odin. I hope you like the God of Gallows in synth form. I think it's a very nice instrument because also, well, even though it looks like it looks old and feels kind of old, but at the same time it doesn't sound old the slightest. I believe these sounds pretty nice. I mean, I could be saying a lot more about this synth, but I won't make this video last forever. If you want to know more about it, well, just ask me in the comment. I can do more about it and maybe show you how I made the sounds you heard from it. There's the other thing which I really liked about it is that it has, probably even due to this very simple and essential interface, very low CPU hit, even for the quality of the sound, which is pretty amazing. Then, with Odin out of the way, I believe it is time to talk about Vital. Well, what should I say about Vital that I haven't already. I mean, there's if you're not new on this channel, there's lots of videos I made about Vital, and if you're new to this channel, I invite you to check them out. Anyway, I'll make a quick overview of it. This is a monster. It has lots and lots of visual feedback. It has features a massively interesting wavetable editor about which I made 3 entire videos. It has every single parameter in the synth is stereo. You can control everything in one way or another. Everything can be animated or moved. There's 6 envelopes, 8 LFOs, 4 random generators, 3 oscillators which are incredibly powerful, each one with a up to 16 voices unison per oscillator. Yeah, oh, something I forgot about Odin. It doesn't support unison at an oscillator level. On that synth, like in the synth of the old days, you had to do unison as at a voice level, which is, well, I don't know, a plus or a minus, whatever. And I mean, here Vital is amazing. It's huge. Also, LFOs and random generators can go to audio rate, which opens up a whole plethora of possibilities in the FM amplitude modulation, filter FM domain, and not only there. I mean, really every parameter can be modulated at audio rate, which is impressive. There's so much to say about it, and the probably most impressive feature in my book is the mod remapping. I mean, every modulation can be remapped with a custom curve, and that allows for incredible possibilities. To give you an idea, I've been programming it since when it came out, and these are the patches I've made. Takes a while. I made lots of patches. I mean, that was I wouldn't say easy, but it's so inspiring and nice to program. It's really just drives you to experiment and look for things. I've rarely been this inspired by an instrument, and there's lots of things you can do. I mean, from just a single patch. I mean, you see, this is just one patch. It's huge, isn't it? And there's lots more I've made, which are, I mean, you can go check my other videos. I've been programming lots of these things, and there's really, little point in discussing this anymore. I mean, if there are some specific features you want to know about, well, yeah, again, you can ask me in the comments. Still, Vital does, in my opinion, have a major drawback. It is insanely CPU hungry. I mean, I'm saying insanely, well, there's worse stuff actually, but it is very CPU hungry. I mean, even compared to Serum, which I found very CPU hungry in spite of Steve Duda reminding us, oh, it's all entirely programmed in C++ for a minimal CPU hit. Hello, Mimi, welcome to YouTube. And then, which is something you need to consider. I mean, if you're trying to if you think of using that synth for simple VA chores, I mean, it's probably not the best choice. I mean, it does them amazingly well, but it's really not. You're probably kind of wasting some processing power. Now, with Vital out of the way, let's get to the last synth in our showdown, which is Surge. Now, Surge is somehow the grandfather of all these because, this was actually out in the 90s. It was a paid synth at the time. Since 2018, it has become an open source project, this as far as I know, and it is amazingly nice. It's huge. I mean, this is huge. There's been lots of work on it. It has been changed and updated. Even quite recently, it received a massive update. You have a lot of different engines for your oscillators, as here I have this one, which is in window mode, but you can have, you can change the mode from classic, which does a lot of things already. Allow you to change control. Even just this supposedly classic thing isn't really that classic, and it has a sub oscillator. You can have unison at an oscillator level, like in every other synth I've been discussing today, except except Odin. And this is, I'm saying, just classic. Then there is modern, which allows you to blend all these four ones with a width control for all of it, which is great. And it's amazingly complex. You can do sync on both this or the analog one, and this too as unison. You can have a wavetable mode with lots of wavetables, and even here lots of you see, you don't have a menu to choose which type of warping you're doing to the wavetable. You have a few, and you always have them, which is well, they're four instead of just one or two, but you cannot choose which ones to have. That's a plus or a minus. And then you can have sine, which isn't really a sine, as you can change the shape in a bunch of weird ways. And you can have two different FM modes, one with integer ratios and two modulators, and one with three modulators, which can have fractionary, I'd say, floating point modulation ratios, and a third modulator which has a fixed frequency, quite nice for wild and tonal sounds. Then you have a lot of others. There's this string, which is basically a physical modeled string. There is alias, which is intended to deliver weird digital artifacts if they are your thing. There is sample and hold noise. There is also the possibility to use some audio input as a source. You also have a noise generator, and here you have a mixer from which you control the level of every single oscillator, plus the ring modulation between 1 and 2 and the ring modulation between 2 and 3. You can also do, beyond doing FM in one single oscillator, you can also do FM between oscillators. And as you can see here, you can choose 3 different algorithms, which, considering the depth of every single oscillator, that means a lot. And there's was forgetting, there is this twist mode, which is crazy. I mean, this is modeled after some very famous Eurorack module, which is so famous I don't remember its name, but you can find it on the manual. This and Odin II have a manual. Graphite and Vital don't. But this is a very nice manual. It's well documented, and it tells you a lot of stuff, and it gives you a lot more links. Actually, whatever, you can also click here on if you click on this thing here on every parameter, it will open you the manual to the page where it is being described. It also has a very powerful effects processor, which has lots of slots, and you can put whatever you want in every slot. You can have send effects, and all you see here, except for the effects section, is actually double. You can have 2 different parts, which you can split over the keyboard. You can play them at the same time. You can do really whatever you want. Now let me show you a few sounds I've done with this. This one was a thing I made trying to kill it, trying to give it too much work for my processor for it to handle. Here you see when I do 4 notes, it starts breaking up. But I mean, I'm doing 4 notes with a thing in which I'm using all oscillators, quite a lot of unison, lots of modulations, all the effects. And I mean, I could never do something like this in Vital. I mean, really, I could never afford 4 notes of polyphony on a patch this complex in Vital, which is definitely saying something. This, I have to say, isn't the easiest or more intuitive thing to program I've ever come across. Actually, it's quite far from it, but it can be very, very rewarding. I mean, I'm really liking the sounds I've come up with, and it's really, really, really really powerful and nicely sounding. I mean, this is a very simple one, but I mean, it's still nice to hear, I guess. And there's, I always love making pads. I forgot about mentioning the filter section, which, well, will have all you would expect and a lot more than what you would expect. There is really a lot of choices, and they all sound very, very nice. I mean, here I'm using this filter, which is actually the same you would find in OBXD, which is an OBX emulation, which is also a free plugin, and it sounds really, really nice. I mean, here I made this one, and I used it in a bunch of others, but there's really there's really a lot of stuff down here. I mean, I'm really finding having a lot of fun programming it. I haven't made a bunch of videos about this one because I get the impression most people on, I mean, I wouldn't want to dismiss people like this, but you know, this is a bit more complicated than most other synths, and probably there isn't that much interest into it being explained, as the people who would want to program it probably are good enough to read the manual and don't like being patronized by a 40-year-old synth geek about how to program their instrument. But it is, well, if you want me to do some videos about it, again, just ask. There's a comment section down here. So it is time to have a verdict. What is best in synth? Crushing your waveforms, seeing it driven beyond recognition, and hearing the lamentation of the tweeters. Well, no, not really. Anyway, beyond this barbaric thoughts, it is really hard to say what is best, because, as you might guess, they're different instruments. I mean, saying what's best really helps with people clicking on a thumbnail, but it all depends on what your skills are and what your aspirations in sound design are. If you have no idea about programming, there's little point in downloading Graphite, as it comes with no presets. While on the other hand, Surge is, I would say, a nightmare to program for a beginner, but at the same time it comes with a huge amount of presets, which you can enjoy playing around with. And if you have Vital, on the other hand, is a very beginner friendly synth to program. It doesn't come with a lot of presets, at least in the free version, but it's very, very easy to program. There's a very active forum you can find on which you can have lots of free patches, and you can also download some free patches from my Gumroad. You find a link down here. There's also some paid ones, but there's free ones too if you're greedy or just poor. Then there is Odin, which is kind of old school, but it also offers some amazingly rare and unusual synthesis possibilities, and also has a very low CPU hit. So if you're kind of poor, at least in computing power, that's definitely a choice. Surge is amazingly deep, amazingly powerful and complex, though for some other things is a little bit troubling. Like, for example, you have a hard time getting synced LFOs. Actually, you can't. There's a bunch of things which aren't that immediate to get to, like FM curves and not FM, I'm saying, meaning envelope curves and things like that are a bit tricky to handle. So, well, then again, I'm sorry to leave our barbarian friend unhappy, but I can't really say which is best. At the same time, though, I believe I will find myself the time to make a proper comparison between Vital and Surge and see how these two combine, because compare, not combine. As of course, as you would guess, they are definitely the best among the ones we've discussed. I mean, all things considered, unless you really are into, there is a reason why you will like one of the other two, which definitely have their own reason for being. I mean, they are really definitely not bad instruments at all. And this said, with this kind of contradictory conclusion, I'd say my video is done. So, if you liked it, please do subscribe. There's a button here to do so, and I suppose you like it because it's been like half an hour of me talking and you're still here. And besides, she has come back here to say goodbye as well. And this said, see you at my next video, whatever the topic of it will be, and I hope to see you there. Bye.